Welcome to Blood Moon Milk, the astrology show that comes out every new and full moon to help guide you on your mindfulness, meditation, and manifestation journey. I'm your host, Aurora, and we're getting ready to have one of the most intense full moons of the year. We're coming up on the full moon in Scorpio that will happen on May 1st, which is also Beltane, and it just is carrying a lot of energy with it. So I'm gonna walk through the highlights of what's going on in the sky in and around this full moon. And then we're going to listen to the end of my interview with Nina Simone. So I hope you got to see the first part in the last episode, or listen to it. If you like to listen, that's great. Also, she's wonderful. She's such a joy. So join us, stick around after the astrology chit chat to listen to the remainder of that talk. All right. So first things first, let's go ahead and look at the chart for the full moon in Scorpio. And don't forget, I write the daily dose. If you want to sign up for that, head over to bloodmoonmilk.com, click on subscribe to the daily dose, and you can find that there and sign up. And I'll be in your inbox every morning, Monday through Friday, with the day's biggest, most important astrological transits, and gives you a heads up about the major energy shifts coming that day. Sometimes they're not so major. Sometimes it's just the moon doing moon things, or, sometimes it's pretty big though. This year and last year, we've had some massive, massive astrology, and we're not even halfway through with the calendar year yet, and we are just getting started with the zodiacal year. So join me with the Daily Dose subscription. It helps support me and the show and helps me do this. And it's only $8 a month, and it's far more useful than, say, Netflix, because it actually helps you to kind of digest and understand the energy that's coming your way before it shows up in the headlines. Okay, let me go ahead and start sharing my screen, and we'll talk about this full moon in Scorpio. All right. Okie dokie. So here we are. We have the chart for the full moon in Scorpio. This chart is for Atlanta, Georgia. So if you are on the East Coast, this chart will more or less be accurate for you. If you're somewhere else in the world, though, just pay more attention to the degree and the sign at which the planet is at, and that will bring a lot more clarity to the situation versus which house planets are falling in. Um, Now, full moons are always the moon is in opposition to the sun. The sun's light is illuminating the moon. That is what a full moon is by definition. And so we always have that tension of the emotional awareness coming to the light in some form or fashion, right? That's not new. But what is interesting about this particular full moon is that it is in the sign of Scorpio, the most hidden parts of ourself. And Scorpio has two rulers. It has Pluto, which is a newer, more modern ruler, but it also is ruled by Mars. So let's take a look at those two planets to get an understanding of how this full moon might show up for us and walk through it a little bit. So first, let's look at Mars. Mars is in his home sign in Aries. He's over here at 16 degrees, just halfway through the sign of Mars and sign of Aries, rather, which is the sign of Mars. Aries is the sign of Mars. But so there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of aggression, there's a lot of movement, a lot of masculine forward motion, and it's still close enough to really be considered conjunct to Saturn, but not as close as it was earlier in the month. I mean, that's of course to be expected as Mars moves much faster than Saturn does. But we are still close enough within 10 degrees of Saturn here. So there can still be a little bit of a sense of having sort of one foot on the gas, one foot on the brakes, but we're starting to feel that gas just a little bit more. Um, but that also means that things that happen now are going to have a certain degree of stamina and lasting power, because while Saturn is holding Mars back to some degree, it's holding him back just enough to be like, okay, is this what we really want to do? Have we really thought this through? Because Mars in Aries is famous for not thinking about the consequences of its actions and just taking a leap of faith before it really thinks about the fallout of all of that. And oftentimes that leap of faith can be quite heroic and inspiring and really brave. And, it can lead us to victory on the field of battle. But sometimes it's a good thing to really think about and reflect on the things that we are doing and that we're capable of, before we just rush headlong into major decisions, right? But so Mars is in its home sign, but it's feeling a little bit restricted from moving as freely as it would like because it feels sort of the weight of the world on its shoulders right now. While we have Pluto, also a ruler of the sign of Scorpio, where this full moon falls at 11 degrees. By the way, here's the full moon down here at the bottom of the chart. So we look at Pluto rather, sorry. We look at Pluto, he's at 5 degrees, 30 minutes of the sign of Aquarius, and he is conjunct Juno, the asteroid of feminine devotion, the hearth and the home. And so there could be a transformation going on in our lives about what it is that we feel called to devote ourselves to. Now, Pluto in Aquarius that's technology, that's humanitarianism. And Juno is a really feminine sign. It's the sign of feminine empowerment and female leadership within the home. So there could be a sort of transformation in the headlines and the zeitgeist of how that looks. What does that feel like? How is it confronting the deepest, darkest aspects of herself? Because Pluto is in a square to this full moon in Scorpio. So this seems like inner conflict. I say inner conflict because the moon is in Scorpio, which is all about turning inward and inner emotional transformation, confronting our shadow side, our shadow self, and dealing with what is expected from us on a societal level. Aquarius is the sign of groups of people, humanity as a whole, so large groups in that way. So I'm getting the sense that we're going through a heavy, slow moving transformation period, but that heaviness is about to kind of break up and things are going to feel a lot faster really, really soon. And I imagine as Mars breaks away just a little bit more, I'm thinking within a week or so, when we see Mars really get a full 10 degrees away from Saturn, we're going to start feeling things pick up the pace in a big, big, big way. Another interesting thing that jumps out to me during this full moon at this chart, looking at this chart, is Mercury is conjunct Chiron. And so this suggests that there's a lot of pain to be worked through, pain to be discussed and talked about and moved and transformed and transitioned out of the body. Aries is the sign of the head and the identity and the I amness of the collective zodiac. And we've had Chiron here for quite some time. He is getting ready to jump on over into Taurus later this year, which can really shake up the financial markets when that happens. Not that they haven't been shaken up enough yet, but it's coming. And we'll be feeling the impact of that later this summer, I think, as Chiron moves into Taurus, the sign of values. But right now, we're really being confronted with, as a society, who are we? What are we willing to deal with? What does leadership look like? How are we honoring ourselves and our own wounded sense of identities? How can we really express who we truly are? And Mercury here is making that process transformative in the sense that we want to talk about it. We have, I think, collectively as a society, many, many people have been in a lot of pain and a sense of transition and not really knowing where they fit in the world as of late. And as Chiron is making his way through those last degrees of Aries, that will likely get ramped up. Then as it tips on over into Taurus, the I amness and the identity wounds will then translate into values wounds. And that doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just what we'll see happen. And it's an opportunity to work through those things. And even though this can feel sort of painful and overwhelming and a little um, painful to sort of like draw the wounds out into the light to talk about, it's necessary for healing. You cannot heal something that is closed off and in the dark. It just doesn't work. It needs to breathe. It needs light. It needs air. It needs love and kindness and attention to be able to heal and to transmute that wound into a kind of banner and identity shift of something that we've lived through, something that we've learned from in order to make us stronger, better, faster. To quote some song lyrics there, to become better versions of ourselves for other people, to become better leaders, to better protect the weak, the hungry, the vulnerable, because at the end of the day, we none of us get out alive from this journey in these meat suits. So it's about what we can do for those who are less fortunate and are vulnerable. And that's what real leadership does. Real leadership looks after the weakest person in the herd, the weakest, whether they're the young without mothers or I'm thinking about animals like the elderly animals, but we're human animals too, right? So looking after those who don't have deep pockets or don't have a wealth of biological energy to heal themselves, or they don't have health insurance, or they're sick, or they're not being given opportunities to find education. These are the things that leadership, when it is performing well, does for its community. Now, when leadership is subverted and is um, not behaving as true leaders should, and it's abusing power, then the inverse happens, right? And I think we see that. Um, but I'm hopeful that this energy will usher in a change and it'll start to, wake some people up, and people can be humble enough to maybe admit fault in some areas. And then we can, as a society, collectively move forward with picking up the pieces and healing together. So I do think this could be a more dramatic, traumatic, emotional full moon than others. That's the nature of Scorpio. But Scorpio also is the sign of transformation. In ancient astrology, it actually had three representations of itself. It was not just the scorpion, but it was also the snake at its lowest form. And at its highest form, it was the eagle. So I think right now we're going from snake to scorpion so that eventually we can be the eagle, seeing above things, seeing through things with those eagle eyes of Scorpio to the heart of things. And that's why Scorpio has such a reputation for being able to see through bullshit. It's like X-ray vision. It's actually that link to the ancient eagle symbol of Scorpio is why that association exists. Um, so I hope that is illuminating a little bit. There's a lot of other planets we've had. We've already been through a season of change, and this year is we're not even halfway through it yet, but this year already feels like it's been a decade long. There has been so much change and transformation, and this chart is full of gridlock to me. I'm seeing squares, squares, squares amongst the fixed signs. Scorpio and Taurus are both fixed signs. But we also have Pluto and Aquarius, also a fixed sign. And we're about to have the South Node pop into the sign of Leo, which will then have a meetup with Jupiter later this year in opposition to Pluto eventually, right? And that's when I think we'll see a real sea change in terms of leadership. I know that the world is full of armchair astrologers, and I love seeing people grow their knowledge. I love listening to other astrologers, but I also think that the bar is kind of on the floor as in terms of who gets to call themselves an astrologer now. Um, I've been studying this practice since 2008, and I have a pretty good sense of intuition when it comes to timing of events. And I am thinking that we'll really see the change happen in leadership when we have that Jupiter in Leo South Node conjunction later this year. That's my hunch. But when we have a lot of energy in fixed signs, we see people trying to, and people, I mean, governments, leadership, trying to exert their power over people and control the masses. But Pluto being in Aquarius does not want to, it's the masses not wanting to be controlled while also having top-down authority figures trying to exert control and sort of um like it, but we're like sand, and it's like they're grasping for us, but we're like the harder they grasp, the more we are like sand pouring through their fingers. So I don't think it'll work because we'll just find some other way of doing things, right? Technology is definitely being used to control people to an extent, but people have lived on this planet for a long time without technology. We don't need that stuff to exist and to live and to thrive. It can make our lives better, but it's not actually that necessary. It's not necessary to have cryptocurrency. It's not necessary to have a smartphone. I mean, I know that we're all used to it now, but we don't really need that. We're just accustomed to it. So I think that there are ways to change our behavior in order to kind of throw off the shackles of mass surveillance and control to do the things that are right in our hearts for our communities and for the people who are most vulnerable in our society so that we can all thrive. And that's my 2 cents about that. The biggest thing that has happened since I last saw you is that we have had Uranus move out of Taurus and into the sign of Gemini. Now he's here, he's at 0 degrees of Gemini, 18 minutes, and he's in a very, very wide, loose conjunction to Venus, which is it's kind of doing some good stuff with Pluto. So this gives me hope, this gives me some hope for the future in terms of ideas and communication and like beneficial things happening that are long-term permanent changes as a result of this change. And it's making it the elements changed as well. It's like the last planet that we needed to switch from those heavy earth signs. Because for a long time we had Pluto in Capricorn and we had Uranus in Taurus, and that was the time of big business, big government, and a lot of money being the priority. Now that we are in the elements of air, now ideas and air-based things are going to be more valuable and more prevalent in society, in the zeitgeist, in the energy than tangible, slow-moving, earthbound things, which money is traditionally thought of as gold, is very much earth-bound, earth realm. I know cryptocurrency is also a thing, so I think that's not going anywhere, but it's good to be informed, right? Um, so yeah, that's the biggest change that we've seen. I know usually we have some kind of an event that will be what I think of as the sort of the starter pistol for the race of that planet going through the sign. I think when Pluto moved into Aquarius for the first time, we had Luigi. That was what I think of as that sort of moment in the headlines. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens with Uranus moving into Gemini. And it's probably going to happen around the time of this full moon. Um, and if not by the time of this full moon, then definitely by the time of the Gemini new moon, as the sun crosses over and conjuncts Uranus during Gemini season. So I haven't looked at that chart yet. It'll be interesting to see what's going on then, but that's about, you know, 2.5 weeks from now. So we'll just stay tuned and find out together, won't we? Okay. I think I've talked about more or less all the planets, other than so Neptune, he's in Aries, 3 degrees Aries. He's making a nice harmonious sextile to Pluto in Aquarius. So if you are a fire sign or an air sign with stuff going on in the first 3 to 5 degrees or even 0 degrees, this is probably a pretty good time for you. At least things are starting to feel like they're moving along. There's some opportunities coming your way. Things might start to feel like they're clicking into place where they haven't for a long time, where you felt like you've just been in this sort of limbo period. Um, it's starting to feel like you're finding your way back to yourself, and clarity can start to show up for you now in ways that it might not have for a very long time. So that's certainly enjoyable. Um, but collectively, I think that this could be a very intense full moon. No way around it. Scorpio is the most intense of the zodiac signs, and there is a lot of tension in this chart because of the square to Pluto. The sun is square to Pluto, the moon is square to Pluto, and it's just it's that just brings out the tension, right? Um, So hang in there, dig deep, look at that shadow aspect of yourself, use the pain, whatever wounds might come up, as opportunities to grow your community and to connect with other people who might have been through something similar. You can be a shining light for them or an example of having healed or transformed your pain into something positive. But and I kind of hate this phrase because I think it's sort of simplistic, but I do think this full moon is kind of a case of what doesn't kill you just makes you stronger. And you can think of that as either what unfolds now will make us collectively stronger, or being able to transmute and talk about things that we've lived through in order to build a community of people who are resilient and having survived the hard things to be able to come together and be stronger for each other. So stay tuned for the rest of my conversation with the incredible Nina Simone. And until next time, I wish you all the best the stars have to offer.
I've worked a lot with Pluto. Pluto's in my first house, so I've got this intensity to me, right? And Pluto has shown me it's like, yeah, I kill things, but I also initiate things.
Yeah, through killing things that are no longer needed or have lived out their lives. And it's not necessarily about killing things, it's about respecting the end of the journey.
Yeah.
And using that raw material as fertilizer for the next chapter, which isn't a particularly glamorous, it's not the spring flowers.
Hmm.
It's the other end of the cycle that makes the spring flowers possible. Um,
Yes.
and so it's funny. You have Pluto natally in your first house. Um, which means you've never lived through Pluto conjuncting your sun, because Pluto has not gone through the sign of Gemini in our lifetime. It's too slow moving. Um, but it's probably
That's okay.
that's the right answer. I have lived through it. It's
Okay.
it's not fun. and I'm getting close to Pluto being conjunct my ascendant. Because I'm an Aquarius rising at 8 degrees.
Mm.
And so, which is funny because Pluto, last time I checked, is at 5 degrees of Aquarius, and it's getting ready to square itself. My natal Pluto is at 8 degrees Scorpio. So when it
Okay.
hits my ascendant, it will be on my ascendant and square itself. And so I'm a little afraid, like like that is not going to be a fun time. And there's this part of me that wants to just hide for like however long that's in effect for, just to stay safe.
No, that makes sense. Okay, so maybe I'm confusing just another malefic with Pluto, but I just remember it being a really, really tough time. And my astrologer at the time was like, oh, it's just Pluto. And it was affecting my health. It was affecting everything health wise in my life. And it was like a death rebirth cycle. And then that's when I was met with the lightning as a big finale.
Wow. Interesting.
And I want to say that journey started in, oh, it really started to amp up in like 2008. And
Okay.
then 2010, whoa. And then 2012, super whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. All those years were not particularly easy for me, uh, either. I was living abroad for the first time at uni, like going to school, working on a degree, watching the news and watching the world fall apart, and just I would listen to NPR in the mornings as I got ready for school, and all it was like, well, the housing market has collapsed and everyone's lost their jobs. And I'm sitting there studying animation, hand-drawn traditional animation, and there's probably not a okay, so I'm gonna say this, and any animator or anyone who loves hand-drawn animation, close your ears. There's probably not a more useless degree to get. Um, but like only if, and I say that only if you are hell-bent on working in the studio system, right? Like I was totally delusional and thought I was gonna go work at Disney after I graduated. Newsflash, I did not. And it's okay. But I've been able to use those skills for a lot of other things. Um, but it's not what I thought they were. And in hindsight, like if I could go and like retrain or to have those years back to study something else, should I have? What like could I have? Would I have? I don't know. I don't know that I would really change anything. Um,
Well, you know, we say that now until everything comes around full circle. And it's just like I have studied a variety of other things in my life. I did a little bit of illustration, not to the extent as you. Um, and some would say that these skills are useless, but really they all come together at some point, and that's what makes us so unique as a person. And it's just like I do believe that artists and illustrators, well, they are artists. We see the world through a completely different lens, and it allows us to how do I say this? Demonstrate and communicate to the people in a different way. Like we are needed, but society has told us that we're not needed. And who knows what the future may offer, you know? Who knows? There might be a need for a certain unique skill set that you developed over time.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. And that's why I'm like, I don't know that I would really go back and change anything, because it has given me a way to think about storytelling. I can draw really, really well. Um, Even if I don't do it every single day. It's given me a creative framework to use for any project I want to do. You know, it doesn't mean that I have to use those skills that way every single time. You know, like I love to garden. I think about color, I think about shape, I think about timelines when I plant a garden because, and that is just like animation because you're thinking about timing, you're thinking about color and storytelling and drama. You know, when
Hmm.
something is dying over here, you want something blooming over here. And it's kind of like living animation. Um,
Hmm.
and so I don't regret it. But is it the most marketable thing in the world? Do I work for Disney? No. No, no, I don't. And it is fine. It is fine. I forgive them for not
It
seeing my value. That's their loss, but it's fine. Uh,
exactly.
not for
I
those.
knew a few people that work for Disney. Just say thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it's any, and this is the problem I think with that sort of like, um, and how limited my thinking was back then was that I would have to go work for a studio in order to be able to be a content creator, to be a filmmaker, and that's just not true. Thanks to technology and the internet and the democratization of creativity and like almost anybody, if you have an internet connection and a smartphone, can be a content creator now and can find a way that is unique to them to communicate their story, you know? And so I think that's beautiful and wonderful. It what kind of um disturbs me a bit, and this is more of a problem since Pluto has moved into Aquarius, is the rise of AI and
Hmm.
people using AI as their only tool for creativity. And then calling themselves AI artists when they're not giving. And I've used AI throughout my life to do various things. I don't think it's all bad, but it's certainly dangerous
Oh yeah.
if we don't really. It's like fire, like fire can be used to heat our homes and to cook our food, but it can also burn us and burn our houses down. It's like how we control it and how we manage it.
Well, AI, it's a little bit alien.
Oh, for sure.
And
uh,
um
why it's ruled by
it,
Aquarius, the whole alien
yeah,
conscious.
it's
Yeah,
super alien. I always joke around. I've been saying it, and people are like, "Don't say that." And I was like, "They've been talking about this alien invasion, and it just so happens AI has the same initials as the alien invasion." And I was like, "Oh," and we see the rise of AI, but it's a tool, and the tool is only as good as its operator. So if an artist is using the tool, then the artist can create other things. I remember when we first got the tablets and people were like, "Oh, digital art is not art." And it's like,
yeah,
actually, it saves me a step from tracing and scanning.
yeah.
I can just do it directly into the computer. It doesn't take away from my ability as an artist. Um,
Or digital
now,
photography versus film photography.
yeah,
I mean, there were people, I remember when digital cameras came out and were popularized, people like purists were like, oh, but it's not film. I'm not in the dark room like burning that exposure on this print. And it's not real photography. And you're like, hmm, are you
it
making
is.
something new that didn't exist before? And is it with intention? Is it reflective of the story you're intentionally trying to tell as a creator? If it is, then it has a degree of validity, you know? But okay, if you're it's not using your exact mark making skills or your technique as a human, it's a different like differentiator,
Yeah.
between craft making and work making.
Well, I think this new wave is going to bring about the need for the storytellers, for the visual creators, because Robots, they can compute, they can do quantitative research and all these things. They can do all the left brain analytical things. But what it cannot do is create. It can only replicate what has already been done. And so people forget this is where you need the creators. We're co-creators. So what can you co-create with? Are you going to do it with this medium, or are you going to do it with that medium? And that is something that can't be taught to these machines. And people forget that. And it's like, that's why they need us.
Yet. But also,
Yeah.
yet.
Yet.
Uh, but I do think it's worth um it's here to stay. It's just like the internet, Um, and in some ways, I'm like, you guys, what's the big whoop? Because like we've had software for a long time now, and this is just next gen software. Yes, it's iterative. Yes, it's self-reflective, and yes, it works on much more complicated sets of neural networks, but that is programming, and that is software. And it's just like they have rebranded um, software into being something new and flashy, and this is going to change everything, but it's still sort of the same thing. It's just better, faster, stronger, and capable of a lot more than the last gen of software,
Well, it goes, I mean,
and arguably
artists,
much worse for the environment.
there's also ethical AI, where
Yeah,
it doesn't have to drink up all the water. And it's like you can
yes.
have AI on your own server, and it's not in some giant warehouse, and it's just using electricity. So it's education, but also recognizing the importance of the artist. Artists have been programmed to think that they're not a value or an asset to society, but
Yeah.
we make society. We make life amazing.
Oh,
Every time a
100%.
town is super cool and people come, it's because the artist came first.
Yep.
And then everyone else follows. And then they said the end of the cycle ends when the finance and the tech bros show up. And then they're like, where are all the creatives at? And it's like, you chased us out.
Yeah. And, having been, I'm a professional artist. I have been my whole adult life, but like that's all I ever wanted to be, but and so I've thought about this a lot, and I've done a lot of research, and um, I it drives me crazy when people are like, "Oh, but you're just an artist," or "Oh, you just draw little pictures," or logos aren't all that important. And I I had a freelance job last summer, and it was for a tech company that did robotics and AI. Won't say their name, not relevant, but I was trying to impress upon them the importance of communicating um, original work that is reflective of them, and not just using AI to generate their logos. And because that's what they wanted to do. And they're like, oh, just
Okay.
use AI for that. And I was like, no, your investors will see right through that, and it will not be unique to you. Also, you cannot copyright AI art. And this is something you need to protect. You need to be able to defend it in court if somebody comes to you, tries to sue you. And I think that people take creatives for granted. And it's really unfortunate because without creatives, and creatives is everybody from writers, filmmakers, storytellers, actors, playwrights, musicians, you know, and beyond. Anybody who is making something that didn't exist before, and it has some sort of creative bent to it, whether it has a budget or is approved by a city council, like is irrelevant. That is irrelevant. If you're making something that didn't exist before and it is creative and artistic, you are an artist, you're a creator. Creative work accounts for like the second largest economic driver in the UK. And
Wow.
it's only behind finance, but it's finance that makes all their money off of creative. So with and it's what is the first thing to go when budgets get cut?
The
It's
creative.
creative budgets. And so the way to claw back some autonomy and some freedom and some financial independence is to feed the artists. Feed and free the artist. Have us create, have us reimagine things and
Hmm.
new solutions for a better tomorrow. Because I promise you, a building can be built without an artist, but the building that is built with an artist is going to be more enjoyable to live in and more beautiful and more valuable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the same goes for the healing world. It's just like there are a lot of, to be an efficient healer, you need to understand the protocols and then you have to understand the creative abstract aspects. And bringing those together is what makes the magic. And so some people are really good, we call them the charlatans. They're really good at recreating things that they have seen to make it seem pristine and perfect, but it's doing absolutely nothing. Whereas the creative inspires, it triggers something inside of you, and you're like, oh, I feel so shifted. And so, me being a creative and mixing that into my healing work has been quite beneficial because, for example, when people come to my cacao ceremonies or sat in any kind of ceremony with me, it's very different from how other people do their own thing because I have created my own process with it. There are some basics that get covered that have like starting and finishing. It's like a story, beginning, middle, and end, with the peak in between, and then you come down, and then, but then it's just like, but how did that make you feel? How was that unique to you? How did that impress upon your memory? Because, yeah, anyone can pour a cup of cacao and throw out some oracle cards and put some flowers on an altar and call it a ceremony.
Yeah. And many do. It doesn't mean the same energy is present, though.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that's the magic and the creativity as well.
I'm excited, like circling kind of back to our earlier conversation about Uranus moving in like out of Taurus, out of this heavier energy and moving into Gemini. And when we have this we're in the midst of like this massive shift of planetary energies. And we've been in this shift for about a year. We got a little sneak preview of it last year, but this year is like the main event because all of those planets are like fully going to be in their signs for their foreseeable future. Um, and so like we've got the new moon in Aries on Friday, which is kind of the ignition event.
Yes.
And so it's not an eclipse, but there is so much energy in the sign of Aries right now, which is it's funny, like there was the Saturn Neptune conjunction that happened back in February in Aries at 0 degrees. And before it happened, I was in Mexico City. We were having a lovely day frolicking, and I we were just walking along, and I remember being like, I wonder what's going to happen, what this event is going to be. And I don't know if you recall that um part of the conversation at all. But
Oh,
like, could you just reminisce for me as to
yeah.
what I said might be on the horizon for us all collectively? Because I remember specifically tapping in and being like a little surprised by what got brought up for me when I tapped into
I've,
collective energy, but I think it's come true.
yeah, no, I mean, one of the things I remember being said is that because you said it was at 0 degrees, both Uranus and,
Or
not
Saturn
Uranus,
and yeah,
Saturn,
and
um,
yeah.
and Neptune, this is like the illusion. The illusion falls off. We're in a new reality, and it's like Saturn slapping you across the face saying, "Wake up."
Yeah.
Scene change.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're seeing that with all this commotion all across the world. And it's like things are rapidly changing, but also we have these world governments trying to corroborate together saying, oh no, we have to create all these distractions, that this new reality is being ushered in. Like it's undeniable. We had been feeling it since 2020, been talking about all the checkpoints, and this is the next checkpoint
Yeah.
of huge shifts.
Yeah. Um, and there was another thing specifically that I remember saying and being like almost surprised that I was like saying it. But in hindsight, I shouldn't have been surprised. But I remember thinking like, we're going to war. And
Yes.
I just was like, ugh, like, but Aries is the god of war, and Saturn is limitations and things being slow and very serious. And Neptune is delusion and it's also propaganda. Um,
Oh yeah.
and so some of the propaganda that's come out is honestly like really popcorn worthy. It's like kind of remarkable. Uh, like also thanks to AI. So like all the things that are happening that we're observing on the global like world stage is absolutely being mirrored in the heavens with the planets. But
Yeah.
that excites me about Uranus being the last player to show up to take his role for this next period of time really is he's like, all right, let's shake things up and let's get things moving. Um, and that's really gonna be when I think things start to change, where we've been feeling it and things have changed, but then this next wave of change will really start to pop off when Uranus catches up, and starts meeting up in harmonious degrees with what's going on over in Aries. Um, that being said, it's fire and air, which is very creative energy. Yeah. So it's going to be really quick moving. It's going to be really creative. And I think it is the time, or it's at least an opportunity for creatives to to champion their work and to honestly stand up for their value and remake the world in a way that is more fair, more beautiful, and more equitable for everybody. Because everybody is a creative inside, like even Wall Street banker bro likely has a creative streak somewhere that has been repressed, that is screaming to come out, in one way or another. Um, and so, yeah, I'm excited for what's coming. But it's up to us, collectively to say like this is what's important, and we demand change and to make our voices heard because the old stuff is starting to fall away.
So could you say that maybe in the midst of all this revolution, it could follow with another, I don't want to say, maybe they called it the age of enlightenment or the golden age, where the creativity comes flooding back onto the planet?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do think that we are at this sort of crucible where the ingredients from the old world are being melted down into more elemental building blocks, if you will. And then what we get to do with them, if we are healed enough, if we are not combative, if we're not doing things that are antagonistic, protect ourselves, protect our the things that we need to protect from people who are out to take advantage, because those people exist. But if we're able to live in a state of enough abundance to be able to share and share alike, there's no need for that sense of competition where you're stepping on somebody else to get ahead. And I think when we get to that point, that's when we can come together in community and really build something that lasts for a long, long time because it's Pluto is in Aquarius. It's not in the sign of Leo. Leo is all about the spotlight shining on one person and that one person being special, and they're the leader and they're the one getting all the attention, and that's great. But Pluto in Aquarius is about the group. What
Yeah.
is good for humanity as a collective? And so you have to be sort of humble in order to tap into that energy because it's asking us to be altruistic.
Oh, that's fascinating. So it's like we're talking about individualism versus collectivistic, and we look at what's happening with the Pluto return in the United States. That's a very individualistic country.
Yes, yes, it is. So interestingly, like we're still in the midst of our Pluto return in the United States. And so there's two charts that have relevance for that. One is very well known. It's called the Sibley chart. It's the chart that most astrologers look at when they think of the United States. Its date is the same date that the Declaration of Independence was signed. So, 4th of July, 1776 in Philadelphia, sometime in the afternoon. It's a pretty famous chart. And there's some other murmurings out there by astrologers who are actually hypothesizing that it's not so much when that happened that we should be looking to. It's actually almost 10 years later when we ratified it in Congress, which was after the
Mm.
Revolutionary War finished and we defeated England. And that's really when we're like, okay, we got rid of you. And so we should probably look at both of these charts to give us a clue as to who or what America is as a country. Um, and I think I was like, oh, the Sibley chart's interesting, but this other chart, and I don't know the exact date off the top of my head. I should, like I said, I've been kind of a bad astrologer recently. But I could look it up. And I think that one has more of a bearing on what we are collectively seeing because we're still in sort of the death throes of something that is emblematic of a Pluto return. Also, interestingly, I believe the Pluto return was exact for the Sibley chart on the last election day.
Oh, that is very interesting.
Yeah,
But I mean, so the thing I was kind of leaning into, I was like, I feel like the only way the United States of America is really going to get through this is to come together and
absolutely. Yeah,
learn
yeah,
and learn how to work as a community, which is in essence Aquarius, right?
yeah.
The collective. What's good for the collective?
It's what's good for the collective, and it's also but in order it goes through like this dark night of the soul beforehand.
Yeah.
Think of how you felt during your Saturn return, where everything sort of felt really difficult and it was falling apart. Pluto returns are like Saturn returns on steroids because a Saturn return happens every 30 years. A Pluto return happens every 240 years. And so
Okay.
it's much more ancient. It's much older. It's really bringing up a lot of historic, crusty, dusty baggage that is generational. And
Yeah.
so all of that has to be dealt with. And that the way of dealing with that in Plutonian terms is through catharsis and a literal death and rebirth. So I don't think that we're done with the American Pluto return. I think we're
Oh no.
still in the midst of it for
Yeah.
another possible decade. And I didn't, I used to talk about America's Pluto return all the time. And since I saw this other chart and have thought about it, I was like, this is some interesting food for thought. And I've kind of changed my approach to things a little bit. I'm a lifelong student. I'm a sun in Sagittarius. I will always be learning and
I
be willing
love it.
to accept I don't know everything.
This is why I love my conversations with you because I'm always learning new aspects, new perspectives. You're really widening my perspective on a lot of these things from an astrological perspective, you know? So thank you for sharing that. And it's just like, because I've heard many conversations where they're talking about the return, the return, the return, the return, and this is the first time I'm hearing about another chart, which that kind of makes more sense because when was the country solidified, and for who, and for when, and all of these things, and but the biggest pattern that I see here is the war, the destruction, the revolution, and then the reconstruction phase after that, which we're not there yet, but we're getting
Yeah.
there.
But the other thing that's also at play now when Uranus moves into Gemini in a couple of weeks is that we have these signatures of transformation in the American chart. Um, the Revolutionary War happened when Pluto was in Aquarius, and when I believe when Neptune was in Aries, we had World War II. But when Uranus was in Gemini, we had the Civil War. So we have this cocktail. It's like every single identity defining war or conflict that America has gone through that has really changed the shape and the face of America, um, astrologically speaking, is all happening at the same time, at once. And so I cannot see um us still looking the same and identifying the same as a country on the other side of this. And I think it will probably be for the better because I do think that people heal collectively through time. I think that people become kinder and more generous through time and through generations. Just like we've come from a place of enslavement and oppression to a place where, at least on paper, everybody has rights, everybody can vote, everybody can, open a bank account. Now, it doesn't mean it's perfect, but I do think that it's a trajectory of positive change in terms of civil rights. I think that's going to continue, and I think it will probably take place financially. I don't think money is going to be the same. Like, I could honestly conceive of a situation where, like, in at the other side of this, that it's like the wealth disparity that we are accustomed to fundamentally changes, probably for the better. Maybe that's just being Pollyanna-ish, but I could see there being like what's happening with what are they calling him? Paper Mario. Um, and the guy in California who set the Kimberly Clark warehouse on fire. And there's other like grassroots sorts of retaliations against these massively wealthy corporations who are modern day slave owners in some ways, paying people very, very little, in a climate of very expensive commodities. So I think that could be the next thing that changes to where I don't know if it's a universal income or if I don't know, but I think that it's just not going to look like it looks right now.
No, I agree. The face of currency is definitely going to shift. We're going to see how it really comes about. And I don't think it's going to be crypto.
Yeah.
Like some form, maybe, but not what everyone there. And I've heard so many different theories and things on that, but the face of currency in itself is going to shift because currency only is valuable based on what the people
Say.
say.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it's like it almost like if you have $1 billion of like at this point you can pretty much do whatever you want in
Hmm.
this world that we live in. But if you don't have clean air, if you don't have clean water, and no one else does either, no amount of stacks of cash or gold bars will improve your quality of life. And so I think that's going to become a greater issue because I mean, I could go on and on about it, and like, but I think it's going to be a theme that we see, we're confronted with, and I think we'll also see people using their influence and their power for good as well. I don't think that money is necessarily evil or inherently. I think currency and money and wealth is actually neutral, um,
It's a
but
tool.
it's an energy and it flows just like water flows. It
Yep.
it flows from like through the channel of least resistance from point A to point B. And but we as people have a lot of emotion attached to
Hmm.
money, and so we create resistance when we think about finances, and that can repel it because I think it's sentient. I think that money has an energy that is,
Oh, it's definitely an energy. And there's also been a lot of societal conditioning and programming as to who gets it and who does it and how we feel about it and how we attract it. It's really deep actually
yeah.
because people are like, yeah, currency's like water. And I was like, that makes sense. Currents are in water, water flows. And if you can open up those channels, which is still water, like the energy can come through for you. But it's the system is very interesting in that regard. And it's just like, then we get into our blockages and are your waters polluted? Are they poisoned? Are they clean? Are they clear? Like, what kind of system are you running? What does your whole matrix grid look like? It's a whole variety of these things. And understanding at the beginning and the end of the day that you are the master of this reality as long as you are aware of this aspect, but people don't even realize how they're being impressed upon. And it's like by having this black mirror in front of us all day, we are being programmed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. Well, Nina, I don't want to keep you. It's 2:22 p.m. here in the East Coast. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. I'd love to have you back again soon. If you would like that, let me know.
Yeah,
Tell
absolutely.
people
Anytime.
tell people where they can reach out to you and what services you might have available for folks who are interested.
Okay, so I work primarily one on one with Kumbo. I do energy healing and I also do mediumship and tarot card readings so that people can gain greater insight. You can find me on Instagram. I'm Crystal Sun Yogi, Crystal with a Y. And I'm also on YouTube. If you love crystals, I have a whole YouTube channel just talking about crystals, and that's Crystal Sun Healing. And then, of course, my website, where everything is located, is www.crystalsunhealing.com. And you can reach out to me. I'm quite responsive, and I would love to connect with each and every one of you. If you have any curiosities, I'm here.
Thank you so much. I will put links
Thank you.
to all of your access points in the description so that people can find you. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aurora. Always a pleasure.